Velgryn's voice cut through the storm. I never thought I'd have to use my true clincher moves on someone like you. I couldn't help smiling. You think stopping my movement was enough to let you win? Let me show you just how wrong you are. The sky burned as she roared. Cardinal Acceleration. AI Anime and Manga presents. If this episode hits for you, tap like, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe so the next bite reaches more fans. YouTube members get early access and help keep the AI narration, subtitles, thumbnails, and renders moving. Now let's get back to the battlefield right as Velgrynd commits everything to one impossible strike. I had freed Veldora safely, but for some reason, Velgrynd looked infuriated. Defeating her wouldn't achieve very much for me, so I really didn't want to go through the trouble of engaging her. But if she was a threat, I had to eliminate it. Ciel answered inside my mind.
Velgrynd is no longer a threat. Not all of her skills have been analyzed yet, but a full set of countermeasures is in place.
Dr. Ciel sure has a lot of confidence. Or maybe arrogance?
No, it is the solemn truth.
It'd be a travesty if I lost after being told that, but no, maybe I didn't have much to worry about. Even in the last battle, I was fully defending myself against Velgrynd's attacks. With Ciel in tow, I could probably shut her down without even struggling very much. There wasn't much point, I thought, in straying from the original plan. I had the opportunity to thoroughly smash the Empire, and I wanted to take it, ending things right here without any bloodshed. Even now, the Black Corps were out in full force. I could see several large hotspots dotted across the battlefield, and nobody else on the enemy side was worth my attention at the moment. I was going to tangle with Veldora sooner or later, so it didn't seem tactically mistaken to damage Velgrynd here while I could. The Empire still had Lieutenant Kondo and Dimrata on their side, and the Emperor's 4 personal bodyguards looked like big trouble as well. Veldora was dominating Yuki's mind too, and I'd have to dispatch him along with all the other enemies. That, and there should be one more single digit to deal with if my math's correct. To know who they might be, but if they're at least sage level, better keep a sharp eye out. So even discounting Veldora and Velgrynd for the time being, I had 8 powerful foes left. Scanning the battlefield, I spotted several other foes I could classify as threats. Presences I decided we needed to wipe out right now. I call them threats, but as strong as they were, they really didn't pose much of a threat to me. Having evolved into a true dragon, my magicule count has ballooned to almost 10 times what it used to be. That earned me major boosts in both the quality and quantity of power I could wield. I really felt like I was far stronger than I was before. I hadn't taken Veldora out, so my fuel tank was topped up. I was firing on all cylinders, essentially, and I even felt like I could give Milim or Guy a run for their money. Whoa, hold on. Can't let myself get an ego. Psych yourself up like that, and you're bound to screw things up. Let's keep our guards up and proceed as carefully as possible. Also, while I was scanning the field just now, I noticed that those threats I detected were already engaged in battle with Benimaru and the others. I did give them their orders, yet the speed with which they executed them amazed me. But were they sticking to that other command, the one about not getting themselves killed? I just hope they don't try anything reckless in the name of lightening my load or whatever. But let's worry about that later. Velgrynd was before my eyes, and she looked ready to fly at me right this minute. I can think about whether to back up my boys down below once I do something about her. In less than a second, I made up my mind. The next problem was how I would fight her. Maybe kick off with Release Storm Dragon, part of the ultimate skill Veldora, Lord of the Storm? That would let me call for Veldora, and then we'd go 2 against 1 on Velgrynd and victory would be all but assured. Looking back, I've now realized that my magicule count was rarely, if ever, filled up to maximum in the past. I had a sneaking suspicion this was because I had Veldora in a released, free state this whole time. Veldora and I are kind of one and the same by this point, with both of us capable of resurrecting the other if needed. It didn't exactly work like Velgrynd's parallel existences, but it was still an invincibility code that verged on being unfair. Having to lend him my magicule seemed a small price to pay for that, and Veldora's overflow magic streamed straight over to me anyway, so it's not like this was any inconvenience. If anything, this sort of power circulation had an energizing effect on me. Thus, while Release Storm Dragon came with some disadvantages, The advantages made it all worth it. So I promptly invoked it. Velgrynd snarled at me. My sweet little brother. How dare you? Now Velgrynd was yelling at me. More like, how dare she, am I right? I shouted back, hey! You're the one who struck first. Besides, you tried to get me and Veldora to fight each other. What's up with that? Velgrynd snapped. Silence. The mere idea of Veldora being consumed by the likes of you makes me sick. I always knew he was inferior to me, but I cannot believe he would fall victim to a mere demon lord. I refuse to accept his annihilation, and I refuse to ever forgive you for it. Then the furious Velgrynd shot out an absurd number of heat rays at me. They didn't work on me, sadly, but at least I learned a thing or two from our conversation. She was that angry because I had eaten Veldora. She thought I must have killed him, completely eradicating him from existence. I knew an easy way to deal with that. Invoke Release Storm Dragon and everything would be cleared up. But before I could, Veldora's panicked voice burst through our connection.
Yeah! Wait! Wait, Rimuru!
Veldora himself stopped me. Worried, I asked him, what?
Rimuru, listen to me. My sister is enraged because she thinks I no longer exist. Is that right?
I answered through the connection. Sounds like it. So if you can come out and we can explain matters, maybe we can avoid unnecessary combat, you know?
You damned fool! Stop being so reckless. If I reveal myself to be perfectly safe right this minute, it would be beyond awkward for me. She'll turn her rage from you to me instead.
What a stupid answer. I felt like a damned fool for listening to him.
I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
It was clear that I couldn't rely on him for anything right now. He's so useless right at the most critical of moments. I wanted to chew him out, but then Ciel interrupted me.
One moment, please. I would like to take this opportunity, perhaps, to optimize Veldora's powers. I have already received permission from him, so please hold off invoking Release Storm Dragon until the skill reformation process is complete.
Its tone was as fetching and courteous as ever. According to Ciel, Veldora's ultimate skill, Faust, Lord of Investigation, would be revised and evolved into the new ultimate skill, Nyarlathotep, Lord of Chaos. Given that this was an evolution, this would come with a tremendous strength boost, but what caught my ear in particular was how Ciel already received permission. Apparently Veldora was already aware of him. I asked Ciel, since when were you acquainted?
He became aware of my existence after your evolution to Demon Lord Sir Rimuru.
Veldora offered further explanation.
I was aware of it, but only became fully sure about its presence a few moments ago. In the history of this planet, after all, I've never heard of a mere skill acquiring sentience for itself. But Sin-type abilities are known to contain something like an ego for themselves, so I began to suspect that it might have been possible after all.
So Veldora was suspecting something since way back in the Great Sage days. He had been observing a thing or two inside my stomach, he said, and what he saw often seemed strange and mysterious to him. Once that turned into Raphael, Lord of Wisdom, with my Demon Lord evolution though, he was pretty much sure of it. It turns out he had been holding conversations with it up to that point, apparently thinking it was me all along. I wasn't that bothered about it, but I was kind of curious to know what they talked about. But be that as it may, Veldora was acquainted with Ciel. That was the important part. I asked Veldora, okay, so you knew each other, and you agreed to its proposal? Is that right?
Indeed I did. I was hoping I could take on my own sister, but under these circumstances, Rimuru, I will leave it to you.
Glad he's back to his usual two-timing self. That's the exact opposite of what you were saying earlier, isn't it? And Ciel's way too eager to mess around with his skills, too. I really didn't think now was the time for this, but maybe it'd be more of a hassle if they tried that stuff while Veldora wasn't confined. Besides, I was kind of interested in testing out my powers. I had Ludora to take on in the future, so I had an obligation to find out how strong I was now. Velgrynd would be the perfect guinea pig for this. Now that the heat was off, no pun intended, I could use her to see how I'd grown in assorted ways. Might as well do it while I can, right? I'll be keeping an eye on my friends, but until they're in real danger, testing my skills will take top priority.
I think that would be a good idea.
Ciel seemed happy about it too. So I was all set to go. But then it had a follow-up proposal for me.
By the way, following my assorted analyses, I am now able to combine the ultimate skills Veldora, Lord of the Storm, and Uriel, Lord of Vows, to form the ultimate skill Hastur, Lord of Starwind. Would you like to proceed?
Dr. Ciel just never lets up, does it? I'm about to fight Velgrynd here. How much free time would it have even? It's almost like it doesn't even see Velgrynd as a challenge any longer. Tinkering with skills seems like its new hobby or something, but I really wish it'd save that for regular business hours. For the time being, I had to reject this idea. I told Ciel, hey, you might find a better way to modify them later, right? So how about you take your time thinking about that stuff some other time? After a startled pause, Ciel answered,
Well said, Master. Understood. I will continue to search for greater accomplishments.
Right. Glad it agrees with me. I'm not sure what was so well said about it, but at least I can concentrate on the battle now. Besides, Uriel was pretty effective against Velgrynd, and no matter how much of an upper hand I have right now, I don't want to throw away that known advantage. And sure, I might be able to win with Belzebuth alone, but this isn't a game. I can't let my guard down, and any failure here would be unforgivable. Besides, I know Ciel's thinking way too highly of me. Think I'll only give lip service to its praise from now on. Still, Ciel's love of messing around with skills was a little harrowing. Its sights were turned squarely on Veldora at the moment, but he said okay to it, so whatever. The real problem would come after this battle was over. I could tell all my friends who awakened to Demon Lord form would have some major skill mods waiting for them as well. Dr. Ciel could work that out in no time, I was sure, and I had a feeling it'd be champing at the bit for the opportunity. Or maybe it was already hard at work. But even as I worried about this, the showdown with Velgrynd was about to begin. The Crimson Dragon and I floated in the sky, glaring at each other. Velgrynd instantly shifted into her human form, and the battle was very suddenly underway. She fired nuclear cannon strikes at me in rapid-fire succession, slashing away with her azure dragon sword. What was the difference between her human and dragon forms? It mostly came down to the difference in defensive force. On offense, they were exactly the same, but the human form was far more energy efficient. That connects directly to being able to fight for longer, so for extended combat sessions, the human form is likely the way to go. But Dragon Mode had an undeniable advantage of its own, the sheer hugeness of it. The scale of her attacks was proportionate to the size of her body, the same power, but a much wider range. That let her take on large numbers of opponents simultaneously, and even if it were just one target, it'd be pretty tough to avoid attacks from such a gigantic creature. Then there's the defense, the real clincher. Finishing off someone so huge required an attack equally large in scale. A sword was unlikely to work, and most magic was just too small in scale to matter. Very little magic worked against true dragons to begin with. But even ignoring that, any magic devised for human-sized targets was useless. It had to work big, or else it just wouldn't cause much damage. So going into Dragon Mode was likely the stronger bet. But Velgrynd chose her human form anyway, and I could guess the reason.
Presumably she is seeking to abandon all defense so she may finish you off, Master.
Looks like it, huh? I'll go with that then. Velgrynd's fiendish rage only served to enhance her beauty. All that rage was focused on her blade, and now she swung it with enough force to cut me in half. But I wasn't about to take that lying down. Leaving my magic countermeasures to Ciel, I charged at Velgrynd with my own beloved blade, a straight sword of pure crimson steel. Her azure dragon blade was a kind of broadsword. She hadn't been hiding it, but instead created it just now via create material. Its grade was God class, but so was mine, apparently upgrading itself for its new true dragon owner. Velgrynd's weapon was a threat, but I was hardly outclassed. In fact, with a shrill teeing, Velgrynd's azure sword shattered. I was pretty surprised myself, but it must have been even worse for her. Once she moved a prudent distance away, Velgrynd demanded, "What did you do there?" I didn't mean to do anything. All I did was try to parry her attack. She was really barking up the wrong tree with that question.
That is the difference in each weapon's performance. My master's straight sword is a masterpiece forged with the heart and soul of Kurobi. Velgryn's is an easily manufactured model, a mere amalgamation of magicules. It is god class due to the sheer number of magicules involved, but in essence it is a blunt cudgel of a sword.
That's how it is, huh? I knew there could be pretty stark differences between weapons graded at the same level, but I didn't expect this much difference in the god class. I suppose wielding the same weapon for a long time, really building a relationship, pays off in the end. That's a real good lesson to learn. My current outfit was made with create material too, after all. Just because it's rated god class doesn't mean I should expect the world of it. I told Velgrynd. Well, I just found out that even in the same weapon class, sometimes the difference can be like night and day. The one you just created turned out to be no match for mine. I doubted that'd be enough to have her give up, but the words landed anyway. Velgrynd, who was no fool, seemed to conclude that I wasn't lying. But maybe she wasn't willing to accept it yet, because she kept on producing azure swords from thin air to slash at me with. Only after all of them got rent to pieces did she seem ready to accept reality. Seething in frustration, she promptly moved on to her next attempt. If materialized weapons were useless, I suppose she'd just have to rely on her own body next. Claws extended out from her hands as she assumed a kung fu-style stance. Seeing this, I put my sword away. Velgrynd stared at me. "What are you doing?" I was experimenting, of course. I wanted to see how I was progressing, so I stopped relying on my sword. I answered, "I'm taking you on barehanded. It'd just be bullying the weak if I used a weapon. A fight like this is all about goading your opponent. If it made her lose her cool, that would be enough to assure victory for me right there." Velgrynd hissed, "Don't you look down on me." And it worked. It was almost funny how easily Velgrynd fell into my trap. Now all I had to do was treat this like a chess game and not make any blatantly bad moves. Velgrynd's claw attacks were fast, impossible to follow with your eyes. But I had extraordinary perception speed. Ever since I gave Raphael the name Ciel, my mind accelerate skill had been increasing. It was once 1,000,000 times faster than reality, but now that was up to several 100 million times. I could even follow the traversal of rays going at the speed of light. I couldn't move at that speed, mind you, but that didn't mean I couldn't avoid this attack. This speed boost applied to the casting of magic as well. Spatial transport now worked nearly 1,000 times faster than before. In other words, I could escape from even a light speed attack with a quick teleport, as long as the attack was a certain distance away. 1 second could be prolonged into 10 or so years, so it was like watching a completely stationary world. It'd be tough for normal people to withstand given that they couldn't move either. But through the activation of Mind Accelerate at certain key points, Ciel could overcome this for me. It didn't really matter how fast Velgrynd could move. Now that I was at this point, swordsmanship or martial arts weren't necessary for me. I could just push her down with brute force. Velgrynd's super speed attack was closing in. It was going several hundred times the speed of sound. The old me would have doubtlessly had a hard time with it. No, it wasn't worth breaking a sweat over. Goading her further as I spatial transported my way behind her, I said, "Too slow." But she was no slouch either. Anticipating this move, she immediately reacted to it. Pretty tough cookie, I thought. She really was the best of the best, and there was no discounting that. Velgrynd answered, "Oh, you think so? I doubt you can move quicker than me. Is that an application of spatial transport then? It's impressive you can move so naturally with it without creating any spatial rifts, but once I know the trick, I can deal with it." I thought my taunting would enrage her further, but she was calmer than I expected. That's Veldora's sister for you, I suppose. But Ciel anticipated this as well, and the next move she was likely going to make was... Velgrynd laid her rule over the space around us. But now that I've intervened to keep a given space fixed in time, no one can teleport themselves at all within. Too bad, huh? That's the only way for her to counteract me, isn't it? Velgrynd had spatial transport as well, of course, and she could intervene and put her own rules over a large swath of space around her. Transport via dominate space was no longer possible for me. I could force it anyway, but there wasn't much point if she knew where I'd be exiting. It remained a potential escape route for me too, but again, she'd know where I'd be going, so it was pretty meaningless. Now that teleport-type abilities were out of the picture, That just left physical speed to decide this. Velgrynd now had the perfect environment to seal her victory. That meant her next move was... Velgrynd's voice hardened. I never thought I'd have to use my true clincher moves on someone like you. I answered. You think stopping my movement was enough to let you win? Let me show you just how wrong you are. Velgrynd almost sounded regretful. You are a brat, aren't you? If you hadn't killed my boy, I might have liked you. But this is the end now. Velgrynd took a stance. Kicking against thin air, she turned herself into a supersonic bullet, accelerating further as it shot forward. Velgrynd shouted, "Cardinal Acceleration!" But the shouted voice was already well behind her. Velgrynd made herself into a crimson meteor, approaching me at the physical limit of sublight speed. It was changing trajectory too. Making this transformation allowed her to function as a flaming ball of wrath, capable of going in any direction. This, I suppose, was Cardinal Acceleration in its purest form. Not a straight-line attack, but more of a guided missile that could go anywhere it wanted. A combination of teeming energy and pondering mass, it was the ultimate in destructive attacks. Ciel had thoroughly analyzed Cardinal Acceleration, perfectly discerning its true nature for me. Velgrynd was terrifying enough, but Ciel had her beat for sure. I created a manas like this on what was basically a whim, and that whim would spell the Flame Dragon's defeat.
As I planned, Master, I have deployed Belzebuth around your entire perimeter. No matter the angle of contact, predation on Velgrynd will proceed without complications.
And that was exactly right. If I tried to eat a sentient target any normal way, it'd be real hard if it tried to resist me. And this was a true dragon. No matter how much of an effort Ciel put in, Belzebuth-based predation should have been impossible. Except that by her own will, Velgrynd had transformed herself into a meteor-style projectile. All of her energy was placed into her attack, and thanks to that, her resistance to things like this had been greatly reduced. And here was the result. Velgrynd was now quarantined in my complex space. Inside that empty space, Velgryn's stunned voice reached me. How in the world did that happen? The moment she thought she finished me off, she was in a completely empty space. For Velgrynd, it must have been difficult to grasp the situation at first. I'm sure it takes some time for her to realize she had been defeated. Better spell it out for her. I told her, I won. You just sit there and be quiet, okay? Velgrynd's disbelief came back in a whisper. I lost? I answered, that's what happened, yeah. And you can't escape my complex space, so I don't even think your parallel existence can exchange any energy with you. According to Dr. Ciel, I had consumed over 50% of Velgrynd's magicules. The replication standing by next to Gadora had about 20%, and the remaining amount, nearly 30%, had been expended and needed to be recovered. Apparently, she could recover around 10% of her magicules per day, so she'd be back at just under 50% in 3 days. But since I had this replication inside of me, she wouldn't recover quite that much. Her own sentience existed in both replications, which made exact calculations a little complex. But either way, I just weakened Velgrynd a hell of a lot. I added, if you want the full story, ask Veldora, all right? Velgrynd sounded puzzled. Veldora? What are you talking about? I think it'd be quicker to hear about this from the horse's mouth.
It is I, my sister. I hope you are faring well. Doesn't really look like it, but...
Velgrynd's voice cracked with disbelief. Veldora? You weren't gone after all? Great. Hopefully they can talk things over and come to some kind of detente about this. So I now had complete victory over Velgrynd, capturing the majority of her magicules in complex space.
Route confirmed. The next episode and full playlist are ready.
Then don't stop here. Keep watching in story order and subscribe before the next part drops.